Well, well, well. It's Wednesday night, July 10, 2024, night 3 of the 37th Summer Fishtrap Gathering Writers. Yeah. We have a great evening of readings from you. From our featured readings tonight come from two of our Fishtrap instructors and a couple of our 2024 Fishtrap Fellows, which you're... Quick note, each night we just like to recognize that the Summer Fishtrap is possible by you folks for coming and being a part of it, for supporting Fishtrap in all the ways that you do. That's the reason we can be here. I want to welcome, of course, all of you here under the tent at Wallowa Lake, all of you who are registered for workshops, and the folks who've come from the Wallowa County community and beyond to be here in person, and all of you folks online who are watching at Fishtrap's website or at Fishtrap's YouTube channel. We're happy to have you here. We have some founders, or foundations and funders, sponsors, just to say hi to and to thank them as well. The Kinsman Foundation, Wallowa Lake Lodge, Eastern Oregon University's Master's Degree in Fine Art and Creative Writing. And every night it's just nice to acknowledge that our little hometown store, the Book Loft, comes up here and sells books. It's a 37-year tradition. And to know that for those of you who came up tonight, after the readings, when you go up and buy books from the Book Loft, 20% goes to Fishtrap. Thanks, Book Loft. Wallowa Lake Chamber of Commerce has been a great sponsor for us, as well as Terminal Gravity. We mention this every night, but I can't underline it enough how cool it is to have those wall tents out there. They're holding classes in there. People are meeting. They really stepped out to help us to do that. For the second year in a row. It's really nice. All right, let's get on with the show. Summer Fishtrap, you are all here in a different kind of way. Some of you, we said, come and teach a class. Some people said on February 1st, 2024, clicked on the workshop that they wanted to get so they could get in the workshop that they wanted to get in. You know who you are. Yeah. It was. Fishtrap also has a long tradition of providing scholarships. And these are ways for folks who, for whatever reason in their life, might not be able to get to Summer Fishtrap without us giving them a little help in one way or another. And we have a long history. I just want to say that our main Fishtrap scholarships are named after some of the important people in Fishtrap's history. Whether you know their names or not, I just want their names to ring out here in the evening. There are two Bryn Lundy Memorial Scholarship recipients this year. They're selected by the Lundy family personally, and other people contribute to that fund. There's the Frank Connolly Memorial Scholarship. Frank Connolly is a beloved person here in Wallowa County. He had my job 25 years ago. We also have the Sally Bowerman and Bob Hall Scholarship for Women. Many of you know who these people were. Some of you, it's new names. I just wanted you to hear their names in your heads. We also have a general scholarship. And we want to continue those opportunities for people. These scholarships are made possible by foundations and individuals who say, gosh, I'd like a new and emerging writer to have this experience. I'd like to fund a scholarship next year. Or how about the group of us, who are in this workshop? Let's fund a scholarship. So if you're interested in doing that, contact Shannon or Jennifer Hobbs back there, and they'd be happy to hear your pitch. Fishtrap since 1990 has also had fellowships. Now, scholarships are need-based. Fellowships are merit-based. People submit a writing sample and say, I would bloom with the Summer Fishtrap experience. I'd like to become a Fishtrap fellow. And what I think is cool is that the fellowship applications, nobody sees their names or their resumes. They just see their writing sample, and we always screen applications. Former Fishtrap fellows are the ones who read the applications. So those former fellows have had the Fishtrap experience. They know the value to new emerging writers, and so they put a lot of effort. They say it's one of the toughest things that they've ever done to select a few. And then it goes on to a Fishtrap fellowship judge. Several of you in the audience have had that tough job. This year's judge was Derek Sheffield. A few of the names, thanks for indulging me here, but it's such an important program. Fishtrap has had more than 150 fellows since 1990. Some of those names include people who've gone on to distinguished careers in education and publication, such as Robert Stubblefield, Betty Husted, Charles Goodrich, Pam Steele, Joe Wilkins, Rachel Kong, and many, 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 many more, and including one of our featured readers tonight. So tonight, we are going to let you hear from our 2024 Fishtrap Fellows. They're going to read about 10 minutes each, and I think you're really going to enjoy this. Some of you have these folks in your workshops and already know what rock stars they are. We're going to start out with Isabelle Eastman. Isabelle is a fiction writer from Cape Cod, Massachusetts. She's a graduate of the University of Massachusetts Amherst and currently lives in Spokane, Washington, where she is an MFA candidate in composition and composition instructor at Eastern Washington University. Her work explores, dig this, listen, haunted houses, motherhood, and the magic of whales. Please welcome Isabelle Eastman.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. This has been a uniquely wonderful week so far, and I'm so excited for the rest of our days together. I'm going to read two pieces tonight. The first is an excerpt from a short story, which is set on Cape Cod, and the protagonist is an 8-year-old girl who is starting to realize that she's not a very tough kid. She is scared of dogs, she does not like being cold, and she recently attended her grandmother's funeral where she was too afraid to approach the open casket. This is a passage from the end of that story, which is called The Viewing. On the third day of spring break, my father walks me out to the ocean. I can hear the wind, but not him. He promises mac and cheese when we get home in exchange for keeping my legs forging steps toward the growing black dot in the sand. The cold wind demands that we still dress for winter, and I have to pull against the gravity in my boots and lean my shoulders forward to keep from falling. He treads easily on the upper beach where the softer sand keeps me spilling forward. At last, I take a diagonal path toward the water. An advantage of walking near the water is the promise of treasures. My steps make crunching sounds as I follow the tide line, shells and sea plants, a dense array of dead and living things. I keep my eyes cast downward, waiting for something precious to reveal itself. I'd found stray Lego pieces before, sometimes a doll shoe. More often than not, the colorful and shiny parts of the tide line turned out to be Gatorade caps or the cylindrical shell casings that duck hunters had left behind in the marsh. I keep my hands in my pockets and trudge on toward our destination, a black mass on the horizon that is getting bigger with each step. Each time I ask my dad what it is, he tells me to keep walking. After a long time, the blob splits into people and a whale. I can see the fins and tail along with the silver slashes down its belly. I look to my dad for confirmation. It's okay, you can go up to it. I run ahead, stopping when I come close enough to see it in detail. This whale is not moving, it is dead. Humpback body engorged, the yellow layers of fat spill onto the sand. There is a smell, too, of rotting salt. It's repellent as it yells, "Do not look at this, do not touch this, do not even breathe this." I turn my head away, look over my shoulder at the waves, remembering the treasures they gave me, and last year's shipwreck with centuries-old beams wider than my shoulders. The salt water stares back at me, balks. After all I've coughed up, do you seriously want more? My dad has caught up to me, and together we gaze at the behemoth. It's not the first whale I've seen. I've watched entire pods of them from boats before, the summer sun reflecting so harshly off the wide white decks that my eyes water. I've seen the ridges of their backs break the surface of the ocean, felt fear rise like bile in my throat and swallowed it back down with excitement. On days where the whales are feeling playful, they like swimming under the boat to bump it with their backs. Their curious nudge sends the boat rocking, a sensation that normally awakens fear in my belly, but when the whales do it, I laugh and let my knees bend to balance me. The whales are the angels of the ocean. I delight in them, these large, humming horses, feel the warmth rise through me because it's clear that they notice I'm here. It's an honor, really, to have a creature that big and wise know about you. I am beginning to think that whales might be gods. But the one on the beach before me has lost its dignity. Its gray eye, something I've never seen from a whale watch, now swims in its socket. I wonder about the fluid around it, whether it is tears or something from deeper inside. A mother lets her son climb on the corpse's back, boosting him up by his sneakers so he can wiggle his way toward the dorsal fin. His light-up sneakers struggle to find a grip before he finds a confident seat along the ridge, waving as if he's on a Ferris wheel. His impish grin melts into a grimace, then he lets out a cry as dark patches of icy seawater bloom across his thighs. Do not touch this. My father, his mouth lined with disgust, wonders aloud if the mother is even allowed to put him up there. I do not approach the whale, do not want to walk its spine the way I did the shipwreck last winter, its wet wooden ribcage half buried in the sand. My father does not lie down with it, the way he once did with a dolphin skeleton picked clean by seabirds. We keep our distance and watch as a scientist in a white coat approaches. She sets down her backpack, pulls out a notebook, and plants her rain boots in the whale's mouth. I am the only one to notice the whale's scream. With a glance over her shoulder at the small crowd gathering, she loudly identifies the body as male. I think about how this whale might be a person as she climbs over the purple tongue lolling past glaciers of baleen. His body unbalanced by the sand, unsure of how to make his way back. His soft eye self-conscious, waiting to close once the people are gone. I become very aware of the tongue in my own mouth. Only when I look back do I have the words. How can anyone look at him and see anything besides a sun? I do not remember the walk back up the beach. I do not remember the car ride home, only that when we got there, my father stood blocking the doorway and stopped me by putting his hands on my shoulders. Shoes off, he reminds me. I am brought back to routine, stepping the toe of one boot onto the heel of the other. I drag off both boots until I'm standing in my socks on the cool steps. I raise the boots, one in each hand, smack them together until a wave of sand cascades downwards. We head inside, where we join my mom and her friends at the kitchen table. Jamie asks if we had a nice time on our walk, and my dad explains how we went to see the whale. My mother puts down her wine glass and listens as he tells everyone about the baleen, the scientist, the boy who climbed the whale's back. As she motions with her own napkin that I should wipe the sides of my mouth, my mother tells me that I was very brave. She hands her wine glass to Jamie to refill, and I begin to glow. Colby thumps his tail against my ankles. My father sits beside me, peels an apple with a knife, and flips a page on the calendar to hang behind the nail. Neither of us speak, but we both nod along as the conversation carries on around us. Thank you. My next piece is something that I wrote this week. I started it yesterday in Nina McConaughey's workshop, which has been so delightful. And it's part of something that I've been working on for a while now, which is a novel about a family that hires a nanny. And this nanny begins to fill certain gaps in the function of their family unit. This passage I'm about to read is about the mother of this family and her childhood when she herself had a nanny. It takes place in a beach town in North Carolina. As a child, Rowena had never imagined her own wedding. Her parents' marriage was a mystery, relegated to a framed photo near the fireplace. Her mother's smile was too wide, and her dad looked even sweatier than usual. Whenever Rowena asked about their wedding, her mother just said that her allergies were out of control that day, and she kept having to wipe her nose at the altar. Rowena's interest in her parents' marriage remained minimal, and she assumed she wouldn't be able to understand the appeal of spending a lifetime with someone until she was much, much older. Her understanding of boys came from her little brothers, two twin terrors who she forbade from entering her bedroom. When Rowena was 12 years old, she spent the summer poring over bridal magazines with Carlota while drinking Shirley Temples at the beach club. Nothing with ruffles, Carlota had instructed her before handing her a stack to read. The glass table radiated heat in the sunshine, and Rowena's eyes stung as she flipped through pages of white dresses. Carlota was getting married in Madrid next September to a man with broad shoulders who she met at a film screening. Carlota said he was a good dancer. When he sent her letters, she'd wait until after dinner to read them. "Why not rip it open?" Rowena had asked one day, anxiously eyeing the envelope, which had been sitting on the kitchen counter for hours. Carlota just shook her head, clicking her tongue against her teeth. No way, she'd say. Imagination keeps me and Ricky connected. It's all about that anticipation. Something in Carlota's voice signaled that the letters had to do with sex. Rowena wasn't sure what writing had to do with sex, but she had learned all about the mechanics of procreation from Cassidy Clemens, who explained the act during a slumber party. The discussion made Rowena's heart race. The next time one of Ricky's letters arrived, Rowena felt a familiar flush come over her at the sight of his messy scrawl laying unguarded on Carlota's nightstand. Outside the bedroom window, Rowena saw Carlota and the twins building sandcastles. The third floor of the beach house was hot with the rising summer air, so Rowena tucked the letter into the waistband of her shorts and took herself down to the kitchen, where a breeze billowed through the curtains. The new chef was making gazpacho at the counter with all the lights off, the only light coming in through the windows. The cold tomatoes, still left on the cutting board, were dotted with condensation. You ready for cold soup? He asked, smiling as he filled the blender. Rowena nodded, turning away from him to slide into the breakfast nook. When he started the blender, she slowly unfolded the precious letter from her waistband, the smooth paper sliding up her belly. She tucked her bare feet up beside her on the bench. Carlota was right about the anticipation. The letter felt white-hot in her hands, and Rowena cast another look out the window where she could see her au pair settling onto a beach towel as the twins turned cartwheels. They called to Carlota, "Watch this, watch me," shrieking louder any time she looked away. Rowena unfolded the letter with steady fingers and planted her elbows on the table. Looking over the pages, Rowena was unsure what she was looking for. Secrets? Sex? Evidence? Ricky's scrawl was untidy and tilted, but as she scanned the letter slowly, she realized she couldn't read a single word of it. The entire letter was written in Spanish. Rowena realized she could only translate a couple of monosyllabic words, and the fluttering in her stomach quickly flatlined. She could not decipher whatever promise the letter held, whatever secrets had kept Carlota blushing any time the mailman arrived at the door. Whatever secrets were in this letter, they had been kept from Rowena, who sat on her bare heels, still unsure what golden appeal lay beyond the shores of marriage, as she listened to her brothers run screaming through the sunshine. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I do want to mention, before we get to our next fellow, Fishtrap has a number of, well, we're having a raffle. And the raffle is not only fun, but it helps fund things like the fellowships and scholarships. So afterwards, if you want to go and buy a raffle ticket, they're $5, or you can get 6 for $25. So it's a fun way to support Fishtrap. Okay. Seriously, it's fun. It makes you feel good too. Autumn, all right, our next reader is Autumn Bettinger. Autumn is a short form fiction writer and full-time mother of 2 living in Portland, Oregon. When not folding laundry or slinging snacks, she can be found writing in the wee hours of the morning before her children wake up. She has won the Tadpole Press 100-word writing contest, the Silver Scribes Prize, and has been highly commended in the Bath Flash Fiction Awards. Her work has been audio adapted for the No Sleep podcast, and her stories can be found in the Journal of Compressed Literary Arts, the Good Life Review, On the Run, and others. Please welcome Autumn Bettinger.
Short, so there's like a whole thing. Hi. This has been such a dream of mine to be here, so I just feel incredibly lucky, and it's been such a supportive community, so thank you guys so much. Also, like my introduction says, I am a short form writer, so I do flash fiction and microfiction primarily. I'm also a competition writer, so if anybody has any interest in doing short form, competitions are a really fun way to get into it. And if you ever want to talk about it, I will talk about it till I fall over because I love competitions so much. So please come find me at some point if you want to talk about that. Because I am a short form writer, I have 4 pieces to read. The first one I'm going to read is called Ducky, and it's exactly 100 words, which is one of my favorite forms to write. It's like a paragraph. It's pretty fun. So, okay, it's called Ducky. I met Ducky when he was already stage 4. He was dangling out a broken window, one emaciated arm wrapped around a drain pipe, the other spraying bricks. Ducky's graffiti was always a masterclass. 1,000 lifelike birds flocking train cars, alighting on crumbling walls. The birds faded by June, a migration of erosion. In winter, looking for a new place to paint, I found half a mallard tucked under a highway overpass, Ducky's last tag before the cancer ate him whole. I shook my can, a thin, rattling eulogy, and released the mallard into flight. All right, my next one is based on a day I had with my son quite a few years ago, and it's called Hunting Hippos. I am careful when I step into the garden. My toes lift leaves and nudge blossoms. My bare heels wedge between woody hydrangea stems. I creep along this delicate ecosystem, watching as my 4-year-old barrels through tulips and flattens trilliums. This is a massacre of bent and broken plants. He is on the hunt for garden hippos. He picks hyacinths and stuffs them inside his shirt to hide his scent. I follow his lead, rolling through the rosemary and flopping, perfumed, into the snapdragons. He gives me a jumble of hand gestures, which I take to mean, stay put, don't make a sound, possible hippo sighting. After my son goes to sleep that night, his bare feet still dusted with soil, I regale my husband with our daring escapades. I tell him we smelled delicious, with twigs in our hair and scratches up our arms. I tell him how the garden hippo, cleverly disguised as our neighbor, is now telling everyone that she was poked with sticks and chased halfway up the block by her feral plant-covered neighbors. I tell him this is exactly what a garden hippo would say to throw people off the scent. Our son told me so. Okay, my next one is also about motherhood. It's called Train to the Last Iceberg. His tangled blonde curls flutter in the breeze kicked up by train wheels. The zoo slides by, passing a giraffe licking metal poles and an elephant staring into the sun. She points towards the polar bear, a great white blotch on a barren scene. She taps her son's shoulder, calls his name, but he keeps looking at the plants and the people that chug by. She watches the water fall from the bear's fur in soft sheets, pattering old plastic jugs that litter the enclosure. Even in a zoo, where great murals depict the ice melting in the Arctic, they give polar bears trash to play with. The train heads towards a tunnel. Kids squeal, a few toddlers burst into tears. They can sense the dark. She watches the back of her son's neck for goosebumps. At 6, he's almost fearless. She imagines the last fight they had, the one where she grabbed him, told him to listen, just listen. She scared him. She scared herself. She tried to apologize. She took him to the zoo. The tunnel pushes in slowly, the light fading in a blast of shrill giggles and gasps. She and her son stay quiet in the dark. Nothing but sounds, no polar bears, no slamming doors, no throwing ice cubes against the side of the house to try and break her anger apart. The light creeps back in as a familiar pressure nestles into her palm, a small hand buried in the wrinkles and veins that puddle above her knuckles. The train sucks its last cars from the dark as the polar bears fight over an old buoy and the giraffe's black tongue licks and licks and licks. She squeezes his hand and thinks about rising oceans. She squeezes his hand and promises not to melt. Okay, and then this last one is one of my longer pieces, which is an actual flash piece, which is a whole 1,000 words, so a whole page and a half. And it's a haunted house story, but it does have to do with love, so I'll wrap it around. Okay, a haunted house at the end of the world. Is this the end of the world? The house said. It may be, old girl. Are you ready? Marigold slid a wrinkled hand up the faded post of her house. The ghosts were heavy with the coming storm, anxiety manifesting in creaky floorboards and swinging tapestries. Marigold leaned over the porch railing as the first plump drops of the apocalypse battered her front garden. The other seaside towns along the bluffs began to wink out, obscured by the storm that ingested the world with a swirling, single-minded intensity. The satellite images had been all over the media before the internet went dark. A storm cell so large it covered half the planet. Earth's own great red spot, only the color of bruised and necrotic skin, mottled purple veined with oily black, sickly, contagious. Ka-chunk! The backup generator kicked in. Marigold closed her eyes as the storm consumed, bloating on snapped branches and tsunami waves. I will protect you, the house said. No need. The house shuddered. Marigold was nudged back inside by rolling porch boards that nipped along her fuzzy slippers. The door snapped shut behind her, and the locks chunked home. I'm happy to be with you here at the end, Marigold said, as she shuffled towards the kitchen. The wind exploded. Rain drowned gutters and sloshed beneath the foundation. Is it, though, the end? The house said. I don't think we're getting out of this one. Marigold settled herself in the breakfast nook. A cup of tea waited on the table. It smelled of garden lavender and lemon balm, Marigold's favorite. The bond she shared with the house lay sticky with memories and murmured adorations. She mourned its destruction much more than the passing of her own unremarkable life. We got out of that thing with Ron, the house said. Murdering my asshole husband was decidedly less complicated than surviving an extinction event. But you are resourceful and clever. You fed me so many, the house said. Killing men is easy. I'm just sorry you had to keep their weak souls inside you. Once they were a part of me, they loved me. Once they were a part of me, they loved you, like I do, the house said. Hail whipped through shingles, softball-sized chunks of ice splintering rafters and shattering siding. Marigold sipped her tea as the house crowded around her with every last ounce of structural support. It coddled Marigold, collapsing into just one tight room. It crumpled offices and bathrooms, slapped hallways against kitchen walls to reinforce this last bastion of safety. The storm sucked up the windows as the exterior shredded. The kitchen walls were so close, bent so deeply, that Marigold could brush the wallpaper with her pale fingers. She smiled, love radiating between them as the roof buckled and plaster rained down, splashing into her tea and dusting Marigold like sugar. The room disintegrated. Buying a haunted house was the best thing I ever did, Marigold whispered as the wind ripped them away.
Thank you, Autumn. Thank you, Isabelle. And I also want to thank the judges and the screeners who really put their hearts into selecting these. It's a hard job. And mostly all of you out there in the audience and those of you out there in internet land who applied for a fellowship or scholarship and maybe didn't get one this year, keep writing. Keep sending your work out for publication. Keep having hope. One day we'd love to have you here at Summer Fishtrap too. So that's an important, maybe the most important message. And for those who do want to apply for a scholarship or fellowship, we usually open them up in the fall or early in the new year. So sign up for the Fishtrap newsletter and keep a look about it. In addition to the fun raffle tickets I talked about last time, we will have a silent auction going up tonight or tomorrow, so keep an eye out for that in the lodge. There are many great items that have been curated by Jennifer Hobbs and donated by local businesses. Okay, let's get to our faculty featured readers tonight. For those who are new tonight, each night we feature a number of our instructors at Summer Fishtrap, and tonight you're going to have a great time. Our first reader is Eliot Treichel. Eliot is leading the virtual Summer Fishtrap workshop. He's here at Wallowa Lake, but his students are from all over the country, and so they get to be a part of Summer Fishtrap from home, because not everybody can get here. So it's been a great opportunity for people to have the Summer Fishtrap experience from anywhere they are. Eliot Treichel is a writer, runner, river enthusiast. His work includes the young adult novel A Series of Small Maneuvers and the story collection Close is Fine. I love that book. He's the recipient of the Reading the West Award, the Oregon Book Awards Reader Choice Award, and the Wisconsin Library Association Literary Award. Originally from Wisconsin, he now lives in LeGrand, Oregon, where he is assistant professor of English writing at Eastern Oregon University. Help welcome one of our best pals, Eliot Treichel.
Hi, everyone. What a gorgeous night. Thank you, Mike, for that very generous introduction. I absolutely love that dude. Yeah. Thank you all for being here and allowing me a few moments of your attention. I am humbled and honored to join the faculty of Summer Fishtrap, and I'm really humbled and honored to share the stage tonight with Stephanie and the fellows. It was exactly 10 years ago this summer that I was a fellow at Summer Fishtrap, and I vividly remember the joy and terror of the night when I read as a fellow. I am feeling a lot of joy tonight, and if you're wondering, also a pinch of terror. But that's okay. I sort of feel like a pinch of terror is the exact right seasoning for life. I'm going to read an excerpt of a short story of mine, but before I do that, I just wanted to talk a little bit about my first experience at Fishtrap and what Fishtrap has come to mean to me and what writing ultimately has come to mean to me. When I got the award email from Mike letting me know that I had received a fellowship, I was in my office at Lane Community College where I had been adjuncting for probably the past 5 years or so. I shared a 6x10 office with 2 other adjuncts, and between the 3 of us, we had 2 desks, 1 computer, and 0 windows. As many of you know, the life of an adjunct is not a particularly stable one, not financially or emotionally. In my case, from quarter to quarter, I never knew if I was going to get any classes, and if I got classes, how many, or what time of day or night those classes would be. And that's just kind of a coded way of saying that from quarter to quarter, I never knew if I was going to have a paycheck or what my paycheck might look like. However, when I got the email from Mike, I had been informed by Lane that I wouldn't have any classes that summer, nor in the fall, and for all practical purposes, I was out of a job. I responded to Mike with something like, "Thank you so much. I really needed some good news." And it did not take Mike long to reply, and here I'm paraphrasing, "I get it." Since my fellowship, slowly and tenderly and magically, Fishtrap has helped me understand me. To connect it to this year's theme, Fishtrap has helped me understand love. This thing that is Fishtrap, and not just Summer Fishtrap, but this wonderful thing that Fishtrap is, it gave me a path and it gave me a community, and community is everything. like I said, it's been 10 years since I was a fellow, it's 20 years since I earned my MFA, and it's 30 years since I wrote some terribly earnest and highly plagiarized love poems to my high school girlfriend and thought, maybe I want to be a writer. And in that time, I have come to understand with hard clarity that writing is, as Kim said on the first night, an act of love. It is the process of love. I mean, what is love but being present and open and using our imagination? We are here ostensibly to study the craft of writing, but being present and open and staying present and open, that's it, isn't it? Like, that's the actual craft we need to keep practicing. Yeah. But ain't that also a son of a bitch? Because being present and open, being love, is really, really hard. It is way harder than learning story structure or how to craft evocative description or crisp dialogue or whatever. It is the hardest thing there is. And I think we kind of all know this too, and that's a truer reason for why we're here. We know it's the hardest thing, but it's also the most worthwhile. So to echo what Shannon said on the opening night, I hope as the week goes on, we can continue to create spaces where we are able to be present and open, especially as we approach the page and put our words to the page and put our hearts to the page and put our love to the page. All right, with all that said, I'm going to read the opening of a short story of mine called Caves, which just came out this spring. If you'd like to read the rest of it, it's pretty easy to find online. There is no real context you need for this excerpt, and I'm not sure that it requires any kind of trigger warning, but there is a warning. There's a couple section breaks, and I'll just try to indicate those with a bit of a pause. Caves. The summer I was 15, a tire blowout sent the dump truck my brother was driving into the hillside along Highway 31. It was the sidewall of the driver's side tire that exploded, loud as a bomb, he later said. Colt was hauling gravel for the Nortons, and the heavy load pushed him across the center line into the opposite lane, tires screeching and smoking as he stood on the brakes. Luckily, no other vehicles were coming, though I don't know if that was luck so much as it was there never being other cars out here. The truck jumped the ditch and then came to a violent stop, the front end plowing into the embankment, dirt and gravel blasting skyward and then sprinkling down like rain. After the accident, my brother developed tinnitus, a buzzy, high-pitched ringing in his ears that was always there. An inescapable noise. The only thing that helped relieve it was other noise. So for a while, my brother would disappear on these long drives and let the pounding air of open windows cover things up. He'd come back with his hair all swirled like he'd just gotten out of bed, and he'd kind of stumble from his truck, not drunk, but more like he'd stepped off a ship and was trying to find his land legs. Years later, I developed tinnitus too, a side effect of the antidepressants I'd been put on. It was only then that I finally began to understand my brother, or at least understand him differently, why it all might have happened like it did. It was so weird how the tinnitus worked, how silence would only make the ringing louder, more electric, how it pushed toward madness. It seemed so cruel, since quiet was about all this valley had. I was asleep when my brother's accident happened. My dad was already on the road and went straight to the site, sent Uncle George to fetch me. My room upstairs got hot and kept hot long into the night, even with the big box fan going. I was staying up late those nights, going to bed when my dad and brother were just getting up for work. My brother had taken on with the Nortons a few summers by then, though he sometimes also helped Dad and knew enough about towing that he could go out on his own. Dad had made him learn all of that stuff: how to jimmy a lock and help someone get their keys, how to check the hydraulics on the boom lift, how to bill insurance. Colt had a natural talent for it, though he'd also had Dad as his mentor, which explained why he finally ended up being better at breaking things than making them run again. When it came my turn, Dad started schooling me, but he gave up pretty quick, not for any single reason as far as I could tell, except that it was easier for him, for both of us. Uncle George woke me by flicking the end of my nose. He laughed when I jerked up and swatted the air. "Morning, sunshine," he said. "We got somewhere to get." My uncle went to the window and pulled open the blinds, leaving them hanging unevenly. I sat up and leaned on my elbow, squinting against the light. Where? Uncle George came back and stood over me, still pleased with himself. He smelled of motor oil and sour milk. Only the middle of his shirt was buttoned, the bottom parted by his hairy gut. He was my dad's younger brother, but only by a year or so, unlike Colt and me, who are 7 years different. And if some brothers are different, then my dad and Uncle George were exactly the same, at least in how they both seemed to think other people were things you could hammer on. "Your brother found some trouble." Uncle George reached out like he was going to flick me again, and he chuckled when I flinched. "We're supposed to help." I asked what Colt had done, if he was okay, but instead of answering, Uncle George snatched my wrist, grabbed harder when I tried to pull free. "Buddy, you gotta be faster than that." He let go when I stopped fighting back. I sat all the way up and bunched the sheet over my lap. A corner of my pillow was as wet as a dish rag from drool. "What did he do?" I asked again. Uncle George looked down at my bare legs almost as skinny as my forearms. "Your father told me to come wake your butt up, so here I am." My uncle stepped to the side, and the sun hit sharp in my eyes again. That's about the sum of what I know. "I was already up," I said, blinking. "Okay," my uncle said, almost impressed. "Sure." He told me to meet him outside and started for my door. A dark sweat line ran down his back, which I lined up with my middle finger. "Didn't you ask, though? Didn't you ask what it was with Colt?" Uncle George stopped, but took a slow moment to turn around. He scratched his chin stubble with the back of his hand, distracted as a dog with an itch. When he finally was done scratching, he asked me if that's what he'd said, if those were his words, that he didn't ask what had happened. I told him I couldn't remember, though I could, and that's when he told me that I should know what I'm talking about before I say things. He pulled a red handkerchief from his front pocket. My room was already stuffy, and he wiped the sweat from his face. The skin under his eyes was always bruised looking, and if I didn't know the truth, it would have been easy to mistake his expression as a kind of lassitude or even a patience with me. "You tell me this," he said, blowing and then wiping his nose, almost like he was giving me more time to prepare. "You the type of guy that likes asking your father a whole lot of questions? Because I'm not that type of guy, but if you are," he said. He stuffed the handkerchief in his pocket, then crossed his arms and leaned against the door frame, watching me chew my lip as if I was really thinking about my answer. But Uncle George didn't need an answer. It wasn't that kind of question. "Then get moving," he said. "I'll be in the car." It's true that I looked up to Colt, and as a kid, I would have even called him my hero. But I no longer believe in heroes, nor do I believe that any man has to earn his name. After graduating high school, Colt went down to Klamath Falls, was going to give tech a try, but he came back right before Christmas break, didn't even stick it out to the end of the term. The house was quieter without him, by which I mean Dad was quieter. Even if I couldn't have expressed this back then, I had worried that Dad would turn everything on me when Colt left, that I would be the target by default. Instead, our father seemed subdued by the whole thing, or what you might call taken down a peg, as he liked to say himself about others. There were nights and nights of TV where he didn't even talk. But then Colt came back, and soon enough it was like he had never left in the first place. He started floating around with his old friends who were not doing much except not having to go to school anymore, which seemed like a grand accomplishment to them. He still had his room upstairs, and he wouldn't so much come hang out with me as he would stand in my doorway, not all that different than Uncle George sometimes did. Colt would tell me stories about the dumb professors he'd had, or about the girls he'd met, or had at least talked to, and how he could have gone to a Taco Bell or a McDonald's whenever he'd wanted, without even having to go all the way across town because they were everywhere. He said it all like he was some kind of explorer, and his tales were not only to dazzle me, but to let me know how innocent I was, how I had no clue. And not only innocent, but also maybe chicken. You couldn't even, he'd say, like he was someone else entirely. I'd listen, sometimes trying to picture it all, but other times I'd find myself tuning him out, wondering why he was even home in the first place. After bragging about how great it was down there, he would then start to dump on it all, would call the girls hot, but bitches, everyone trying to talk smart in class, but being clueless about real shit. Anyone with half a brain could see how excited he was, though, how much he wanted to go back. Dad told Colt that he didn't care much one way or another if Colt took up school again, but I knew that wasn't true, and it wasn't long before Dad started writing Colt about earning some money and paying for his own groceries. After a while, when Colt still didn't even have work, our dad started doing this thing where he'd cook dinner enough for all three of us, but then tell Colt that he couldn't have any, or that there wasn't any left, even though you could see the spaghetti sitting right there on the stove. "You're telling me I can't have any of this?" Colt would ask. "Any of what?" Dad would say. Uncle George was waiting in his ancient Accord. It had mismatched panels and a roof painted over with white Flex Seal. Just as I was walking around to the passenger side, Uncle George hit the horn, cracking up when I jumped, like it was the funniest thing. "Come on now," he said, after I got in and wouldn't look at him. He turned awkwardly, too big for his seat, and squeezed the back of my neck. "You don't always got to be like that, do you?" I squirmed and shrunk myself to the side. "I'm not," I insisted, a warble in my voice. But I was. I'd been like that for a long time already. Instead of backing up and turning around, Uncle George pulled the Honda forward and circled under the shade oak and through the front yard, pulping the brown and tindered grass. He bumped over the railroad ties that bordered the lawn and onto the gravel driveway, driving at an idle to keep the dust down, as if that was actually possible anymore. He took us north on 31, putting the lake bed on my side of the car. Its cracked skin stretched all the way to the far hills. Heat rippled across the horizon, and only way out there was there any remaining shimmer of water, though that could have just been the sun playing tricks. My uncle accelerated, and the Accord's AC whined like a hairdryer and only slightly cooler, but he wouldn't let me roll my window down even a crack. "Either the hot air is in or the hot air is out," he explained, not considering that it also could be both. Okay, I thought. Sure. During the winter and early spring, the lake would come back and fill in, though never quite all the way, and never as much as the year before. Even when the lake was full, it averaged only a foot or so in depth, and because it was so shallow, there was a mirroring effect, the water casting back a sharp reflection of sky, even on the most overcast days. Unless a person stood right on the shore, there was no way to tell it was an illusion. It would look like so much water, like the kind of lake that should have had boats and water skiers and swim docks, like a paradise, almost. Late spring, the water would already be receding. The lake would be water, and then it'd be mud, and then the mud would begin to harden and split apart, patterned like alligator hide. Thin layers of dirt would peel off, page-like, crumbling into a fine powder with the slightest of breezes. Hot afternoon winds then scoured the lake bed, swirling all that silt skyward into colossal dust devils that would spin from one side of the valley to the other, burying us. End of summer, near everyone had a cough. My uncle's cell began vibrating on the dashboard, and he leaned forward to grab it. He held it at arm's length to see who was calling. "Yep," he answered. I understood my dad was on the other end. My uncle didn't use my name, but he mentioned having to wake me, that I still seemed half asleep. Yeah, he said. "I'll see who else we can get." After he hung up, I could feel Uncle George looking at me. He kept spinning his phone in his hand until finally he let out a loud sigh and tossed it back on the dash without dialing anyone else. "You want to know or not?" he finally asked. I straightened, which was its own kind of answer, but didn't say anything. I stamped my shoe print across a flattened oil filter box, then towed it out of the way. The truth was, I wasn't sure if I wanted to know or not, and I kept feeling that I both wanted to get wherever we were going and never get there at all, these two opposite urges panicking through me, filling and then emptying. I asked Uncle George if he wasn't sure he was supposed to call someone, and he shook his head. We rode in silence like that for a long while before he spoke again. "I'm sure he's fine, if you're wondering that." The way he brought it up made me fear something must be wrong, and I think Uncle George could sense that. He started talking about how my brother was one of the luckiest people he'd met, how Colt had been that way ever since he was a kid. Watched him fall out of a tree once when he was your age. Gets up, starts laughing about the whole thing. "What other times?" I asked, not remembering the fall he was talking about. "Hell, I don't know, whenever. All the time, really. Only person I know that's luckier than your brother is my brother." He smiled and winked, and then I wasn't sure if he'd meant what he'd said or if he was only joking. It would say a lot about a person if they thought my dad was lucky. Uncle George swore then and hit the brakes, his car veering hard toward the shoulder, seatbelt locking against my chest. I'd seen a flash of something out of the corner of my eye, and my instinct was that it must have been an animal, but when I looked, there was my dad. He was standing in the middle of the highway, right on the center line, phone to his ear. His back was to us, and he turned around at half pace, his expression unbothered yet indignant, like he didn't care that we'd almost hit him, only that we'd made him turn around. His tow truck was parked diagonally across the other lane, blocking off the accident, hazard and emergency lights flashing. Just past him was the wreck. "Here's an example," Uncle George said, a little breathless. "If you're an unlucky person, you might choose to stand someplace else." Uncle George eased his car all the way onto the shoulder and parked. My dad kept talking on the phone, staying right there in the middle of the road. I asked Uncle George why Colt wasn't there, but he didn't know, and when I couldn't spot him, I became convinced he was still in the dump truck, dead. My uncle tapped his window, pointing high up on the hillside. There. Colt was directly above the wreck, a good 40 yards from the road. He was squatting on his heels and smoking a cigarette, our dog Mandy sitting next to him. Colt was looking in our direction, so I leaned forward and waved, but he gave no acknowledgement. His hair was a tumbleweed of curls, sun-bleached almost to gold by that point in the summer, arms and face and neck as dark as his boots. He took another drag, then roughed the top of Mandy's head and gave her a pat-pat. She was a terrier mix, the kind of dog my dad always said he hated, but one my mom supposedly would have loved. Once I'd spotted him on the hill, it was impossible not to notice my brother's white t-shirt, the way he stuck out so much after being invisible. Not there, there. The reverse of how things would end up. Thank you.
Thanks, Eliot. How's everybody feeling out there? Pretty good? Yeah. This is a good night, man. I already talked about raffle tickets, and then I talked about, well, there's going to be one of those auction-y things happening pretty soon. But one other way that you can be a part of Fishtrap is Fishtrap's Fish Trapper program. What's that? Well, it's just a way to support Fishtrap monthly with a donation of as little as $5 a month. You can become a fish trapper easy. Many of you are already out there are. Thank you so much. Your monthly contributions help keep the lights on and help make things happen. And this week, Jennifer Hobbs came out with a cool idea to do a drawing every night for those who are fish trappers. We don't want to be elite about it, but we want to thank people who are fish trappers by giving them some fancy prize. A fancy prize? Come on up. Yeah.
This is a very functional prize. And I do want to thank our sponsors, Arrowhead and Wild Carrot helped us with our faculty bag gifts. And there will be a few truffles in our raffle baskets and in the fish trapper thing if they make it through the weather. So they've been very warm. I've been shaking the boxes to make sure they still kind of, sound like they're not all turning them gently in the fan. But we have a fuller mug, and again, just to thank everybody who is doing the monthly contributions, and just to emphasize what a big deal that really is, and how much of our programming that lifts, and just how encouraging it is to all of us. I had a really great conversation with a gentleman I think is gone who started our conversation by, I just dropped by. I'm only a retired onion farmer. And I said, we need to hear your story. And he said, okay. And he stuck around, and it's so encouraging in a time when we need this kind of encouragement. So thank you. So without further ado, Mike. Oh, and remember, if you get drawn, you get put back in on Saturday. Ooh, Cam Scott, can you hear this?
He's inside watching the table.
Okay. Cam Scott, extraordinaire. I will be trotting this back over, and if anybody has any questions about Fish Trapper programming or wants to talk to me about the raffle, we have 5 raffle items, and each of the baskets are worth at least $125. Here he comes. Oh! Congratulations. Happy dance. Anyway, thank you so much. We'll do the silent auction starting tomorrow.
Cool thing is that Cam Scott is in the lobby volunteering tonight, so that's another way to give back to Fish Trap, and that is really appreciated. All right, here comes our final Fish Trap reader. It's gone fast tonight. What's one of the biggest challenges and one of the most fun challenges each year is to pick who is going to teach at Summer Fish Trap each year. What we do is we survey all of you who've taken workshops and ask you who you think would be a great addition to the Fish Trap faculty. We also ask the faculty and other people in the community and other folks. And each year we try to provide a variety pack, a diverse group of voices and experiences and ages and orientations and backgrounds. So all of you have a great experience, and it only builds the Summer Fishtrap community. Many of our Summer Fishtrap instructors have come many times, some a few, and every year we always try to bring a new voice into the Summer Fishtrap community, and I'm feeling pretty proud about this one. Take a listen to this. We're so honored to have Stephanie Elizondo Griest come to us. Just listen to this if you're not familiar with her work. Stephanie is a globe-trotting author from the Texas-Mexico borderlands. Her 5 award-winning books include the memoirs, All the Agents and Saints, Mexican Enough, Around the Block, My Life in Moscow, Beijing, and Havana, and the best-selling guidebook, 100 Places Every Woman Should Go. Beacon Press will publish her latest work in 2026, Art Above Everything, Global Women with a Singular Vision. Write that down. She has also written for the New York Times, Washington Post, BBC, Travel and Leisure, and Oxford American. Distinctions include a Margolis Award for Social Justice Reporting, a Hodder Fellowship at Princeton, a Lowell Thomas Travel Journalism Gold Prize, and currently she's the Professor of Creative Nonfiction at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. She has performed on 5 continents in capacities ranging from a moth storyteller to a literary ambassador for the United States Department. Oh my goodness. Give a warm Summer Fishtrap welcome to Stephanie Elizondo Griest.
Hola, everybody. Thank you so much for this incredible welcome. Thank you for inviting me to this magical place. My partner Rick and I, we are so feeling the love here. Thank you. I write about the concept of enough. Am I enough? Is there enough? Enough is enough. Is this enough? Tonight, I will share 2 variations on this theme. A content warning, both graphically describe bodies in pain. The first occurred on a July afternoon, even hotter than we experience today, 90 miles north of the Texas-Mexico border. Temperatures there routinely hit the triple digits, which is why the bodies of 129 undocumented migrants were found 1 year in Brooks County. The Sheriff's Department keeps their files in a 3-ring binder called the Dead Book. Under the cause of death, for every single migrant, it says, hiking through ranch illegally. I was interviewing the sheriff of Brooks County, Texas, when he got a call. He looked at me and he said, "You got a weak stomach?" This excerpt takes place after we discover the migrant is a woman. Her body has been laying in the brush under the sun for 3 days. She epitomizes the enough that I write about most often. Ya basta, enough. Enough is enough. It's called Code 500. Just then, the undertaker arrives on the scene. He is an older man with a slender build. He carries a white bedsheet and a large cardboard box. Breaking through our imaginary railing, he walks right up to the woman's feet, sets down his parcels, and slides on a pair of blue rubber gloves. He briskly searches her pockets, inches from the beetle pit of her stomach. First, he finds some dollar bills, a 20, a 5, 3 ones. He piles these atop the woman's thigh. Next, he pulls out an LG cell phone and wipes it clean. Running his fingers along her bra line, he checks to see if anything is tucked inside. An ID, maybe, a list of phone numbers. There is nothing. Now comes the task of slipping the woman into the bag. He unfurls the bedsheet and lays it out beside her. Somehow it must go beneath her. Carefully, he rolls the woman onto her side. That makes her scalp fall off, hair and all. She has become liquid. All of her is leaking and dripping. The undertaker catches her scalp. He slides it back into place, as though assisting a lady with an errant wig. While the rest of us stand and stare, Davila bounds over to help. They push the sheet beneath her and roll her back on top. She is small, Davila announces, probably Guatemalan or Honduran. The two men swaddle her in the sheet, half bones, half stew, and stuff her into a black body bag with golden zippers. Davila, the sheriff, and the Border Patrol agent fan out 30 feet. They scan the brush for approximately half a minute before heading back to their respective trucks. There is no obvious evidence in sight. We leave behind only an empty water bottle and a host of beetles. No words are spoken. No rights are given. Over by the ford, Davila wipes his shoes on a patch of huisache. Gotta make sure there's no bodily fluid on me, 'cause it'll stink, he explains. We notice the undertaker struggling with the gurney. Davila hurries over. Together, they prop it open, lay the body bag on top, strap it down, lift it up, and roll it into the back of the van. Davila introduces me to the undertaker. His name is Angel, pronounced Angel de Tejano way. I want to say, how fitting, and applaud his professional graces. But before I can speak, Davila tells him I am a writer. Angel shakes his head. A lot of people write stories, he says softly. Nothing ever gets done. I hear this a lot. It never fails to shatter me. I usually brush it off with a self-deprecating remark and a smile. But there is just something about standing in the woods with a 3-day dead woman in 95-degree heat that gives me the audacity to hope that maybe, just maybe, something will change this time. Congress will change, minds will change, policy will change, and a humane immigration law will finally be enacted. And although that hope vaporizes into idealistic mist before I can even articulate it, there remains a spark of optimism that, by virtue of being written about, this Code 500 might be remembered. That even if we never know her name, or whether she's Guatemalan or Honduran, or for all we know, Chinese, this one member of the 34 who died before her and the 94 who will die after her, this single year in this solitary county of this one state, could be memorialized inside of a story. And at the very least, I will remember her. This one who hiked illegally through this ranch and got annihilated for it. I will remember what remained of her face and her feet when I tried to fall asleep at night. Is it wrong, Angel, to pray that this counts as something getting done? I wish to say this. I wish to say this, and a great deal more. But there is time to only feebly smile before Angel retreats to the driver's seat, where he removes a pair of badly soiled gloves. He already knows he will be back tomorrow, and I will not. Repeat after me, ya basta. Enough is enough. After a decade of witnessing horrors like this, both in the Texas-Mexico border and also the New York-Canadian border, particularly at the Mohawk Nation of Okosasni, I started thinking more critically about art. I loved what I was writing. I believed in what I was writing. But I couldn't help wondering, is it enough? So I started traveling around the world, searching for other women who have renounced everything to devote the entirety of their lives to their artistic endeavors. India, Rwanda, Romania, Qatar, Cuba, Iceland, Peru, Aotearoa, which is the homeland of the Maori, and New Zealand. Woven throughout their narratives is one of my own. This next story details the moment I discovered my own answer to the question I asked all of those women: is art enough? This chapter is called Art is Medicine. It's not that I don't notice my stomach doubling in size. They're just more reasonable explanations for it. Like that bucket worth of ceviche that I've consumed since arriving here in Peru, or the countless pisco sours that followed. Altitude could also be the culprit. My ears are popping, my mind is whirling. It makes sense that my belly is distending too. But Cielo, my fiancé, is concerned enough to call Tito. Tito is a renowned curandero de sonido, a traditional sound healer. People line up to tell him their ailments. He realigns the meridians of their bodies using the frequencies of sound. We're in luck. Tito is hosting a healing tonight. Cielo knocks on his door. Tito is an ageless Peruano with a raised mole on his forehead and curly gray hair that hangs past his shoulders. He leads us to his music room, where a woven textile unfurls across the floor. Lining the shelves are flutes with centuries-old histories. Some are hewn of wood, others of stone. One has a bell shaped like the head of a jaguar. Tito removes each flute from the shelf and lays it atop the textile. The panpipes are for purification, he says. The tiniest flute, made from the delicate bones of a condor, call in the spirits. The longest flute, with the deepest resonance, is Abuelo, the grandfather. It connects the listeners to their past. Gradually, other guests arrive. They claim the pillows encircling the textile. Tito blows into a massive conch shell. He strums his charango with a condor feather as he walks around the circle. Cielo follows behind, playing her violin. Their music penetrates like the smoke coiling from the copal. It snakes beneath my eyes. It snakes beneath my skin. Tito selects a flute that is thicker than his wrist and several feet long. Approaching me, he blows through the centermost hole. The sound undulates my belly. Cielo swoops in, then lowers to her knees. She plays the lullaby she composed for me early in our courtship. Never have I heard sounds so tender. Every cell of me contracts. Every cell of me expands. Any chance you're pregnant? My doctor back in Chapel Hill asks, her hands in my belly. Not a chance. Are you sure? I think for a moment. Well, I am Catholic. She doesn't laugh. You feel like you're 20 weeks pregnant, Stephanie. But my partner's a woman. She arranges for blood work, then hands me a cup. There's hopefulness in this gesture. Pregnancy is a happy explanation for why my womb is swelling. 2 days before surgery, Cielo and I invite friends to her log cabin in the woods. Driving home from the liquor store, I notice the feed store is selling pumpkins. We pull over. Do you think that one's the size of your tumor? Cielo asks, pointing at a chubby pumpkin. Of course not. My tumor is much bigger than that. Cielo enters the feed store and returns with a tape measure. How about this one? Gross. No, that thing is huge. Cielo measures it anyway. It's just a couple centimeters off. Driving home with the pumpkin on my lap, I contemplate the one in my belly. My left ovary is surely history. I told my surgeon to remove the right one too, if it looked remotely suspicious. So this is probably my last weekend with ovaries. I haven't exactly treated them well. I've been taking birth control pills since I was 20, but often irregularly, swallowing 2 or 3 at a time to make up for days that I missed. And if I ever had unplanned sex, I gulped a morning after pill too. No doubt my ovaries are frustrated. Their driving mission has been thwarted every month for the past quarter century. It only makes sense why they grew the biggest thing they could with every non-spermal material available. Among our guests is a friend who is several months pregnant. She walks through the cabin door looking luminously fertile. We stand side by side, comparing our bellies. A single woman, she has spent tens of thousands of dollars on her pregnancy and endured multiple miscarriages as well. Her bump swells with her hard-earned dreams. My bump has extinguished my own. Cielo calls us outside, where she has built a bonfire. We envision tonight as a ceremony of sorts, something to fortify my body against the threat of cancer. But when Cielo instructs our guests to take turns stabbing the pumpkin as a tumor proxy, they are aghast. She tosses it into the flames instead. The pumpkin lands with a thud between the logs, roasts a few seconds, then implodes, spewing seeds I try really hard not to interpret as cancer cells. The air thickens with charred pumpkin. I never decided not to have kids. Every time a hopeful breeder appeared in my life, however, I was more enamored with the book project. 2 of my previous partners ended our relationships because of this. Cielo, meanwhile, has already picked out our sperm donor. I had begged to pull off this momentous decision until my latest book finally got published. But now the decision has been made. My fertility is over. My relationship with Cielo soon will be too. An hour after surgery, I regain enough consciousness to ask if I have cancer. Nope, says a faraway voice. Did I get a hysterectomy? Yep. I cry with relief until I fall back asleep. Then the surgeon breezes in, still giddy from the procedure. Your tumor, it was huge, she says. So big, in fact, she couldn't remove it until they had suctioned out 2 liters of its fluid. She draws it up on her cell phone. Bubbled over a medical towel, it looked like something dredged from the sea. A mutant anemone glistening with blood. It dwarfed the scissors beside it. Along with the tumor, she excavated both of my ovaries, plus my uterus and cervix. An outfit called the Tumor Board will continue studying the tumor for the rest of the week. Not to worry, though, she says. The verdict almost never changes. When the phone rings, a week later, my mother is busy coaxing my father out of my kitchen. By the time I hang up, she is kneeling beside me while he eats every chocolate in the pantry. We stare at each other, too stunned to speak. The verdict has changed. The surgeon just diagnosed me with ovarian cancer. Chemotherapy starts in 3 weeks. The first thing you realize as a cancer patient is how many of your body parts are expendable. Loyalties are instinctively drawn and keenly felt. Like my right ovary. Even when I learned that its partner grew the tumor, I felt no mercy for it. I wanted both ovaries gone. Ditto with my breasts. When a geneticist screened me for the BRCA gene, I vowed to have a double mastectomy if she found even a trace. Losing my hair to chemo, though, is another matter. Not only do I associate my hair more with my womanhood than either my womb or my breasts, it is also the most visibly Mexican thing about me. That's right, my friends. Even when I'm being diagnosed with cancer, I am still worried about being Mexican enough. I have the blue eyes and the light skin of my paternal Griest family, but my pelo es puro Elizondo, thick, dark, and curly. One of the last things anyone remembers my maternal abuela saying before she committed suicide at age 25 is that she didn't ever want her youngest son's curls cut. Las Tias upheld that wish until he was refused enrollment at elementary school because of it. Having few other connections to my abuela, I started wearing my hair halfway to my elbows in high school. I've kept it that length ever since. My ovaries, my uterus, my cervix, possibly even my breasts. None of these losses make me any less myself. But my hair is my identity, my ancestry, my inheritance. I will not feel part of my lineage without it. Suddenly, I am hyperventilating. Mom steers me out onto the balcony, grabbing Dad along the way. He has reached the stage of Alzheimer's, where he is largely self-absorbed, but he still enjoys excitement. For the moment, I am more intriguing than the chocolate in the pantry. Mom sits me down in the Adirondack chair. She orders Dad to hold my hand while she punches numbers into her phone. I assume she's calling back the surgeon, but then the voice of my sister resounds through the speaker. Toda mi familia is now here. Yet my breath does not return. My body has been absorbing one trauma after another for 14 days. Apparently, my lungs have declared una huelga, a strike. Mom holds the phone. Dad holds my hand. I hold my pelo and I heave. It is late September in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. The oak tree above us is already autumnal. As a breeze rustles through, golden leaves begin to fall. You see that? Mom asks. That is you. You are going to lose your hair just like the tree will lose its leaves. As the wind intensifies, more leaves swirl around us. I stare up at the branches as they slowly denude like my body soon will. Not only my pelo, but also my eyelashes, my eyebrows, my leg hair, my arm hair, my pubic hair, until I am wholly naked, until I am a middle-aged woman reborn. And then spring will come, Mom says. Spring will come and you will grow it back again. With this promise comes the breath. My entire family exhales. Turn to your neighbor. Look them deep in the eyes. And you're going to repeat after me. Art is enough. You are enough. We are enough. Let us love enough to make it so. Woo! Saludos. Good night, everyone.
Wow. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Eliot. Thank you, Autumn. Thank you, Isabelle. That was a wonderful night. Thank you all for being a part of this, and I hope it enriched your lives under the tent here and out there if you're watching on the internet. I just want to tell you a quick thing before we go. There's a book signing afterwards. Eliot and Stephanie both have works. You can talk to Autumn and Isabelle and get to know them a little better, and you can sign up for the raffle and all those things. Tomorrow they're going to have a proper breakfast here for all of you here if you in the restaurant. And then tomorrow afternoon's craft talks. We've been exploring the theme of love. And we eventually we get to this. At 1:30, there's a craft talk with Laura Pritchett, out of the sheets and onto the page, writing sex scenes. Whew. I have to take out the garbage. I have other things to do. At 3 o'clock, there's a panel discussion moderated by Fishtrap's Shannon McNerney. Whose stories can we tell? We've talked about this a lot. Writing from the voice of another, moderated by Shannon, with panelists Nina McConaughey, Tim Z. Hernandez, and Eliot Treichel. That should be super interesting, as we all are writing stories about each other. And then tomorrow night's readings are not to be missed for all the general public. It's a triple header. Amy Irvine, Rena Priest, and Sharma Shields. So I hope we see you again here tomorrow night. Thanks.